Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of Searching for Grace, where I try to foster a space where people of any and all faiths and beliefs can participate in a discussion so that we can better understand ourselves, each other, and the world around us. Today, we will be going through the passage regarding Zacchaeus, which is depicted in the icon behind me, and we will revisit this icon maybe after we read the scripture. So this is the Gospel according to Luke 19:1-10. At that time, Jesus was passing through Jericho, and there was a man named Zacchaeus. He was a chief collector and rich. And he sought to see who Jesus was, but could not, on account of the crowd, because he was of small stature. So he ran on ahead and climbed up into a sycamore tree to see him, for he was to pass that way. And when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, make haste and come down, for I must stay in your house today. So he made haste and came down and received him joyfully. And when they saw it, they all murmured, He has gone in to be the guest of a man who is a sinner. And Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, Behold, Lord, the half of my goods I give to the poor, and if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I restored fourfold. And Jesus said to him, Today salvation has come to this house, since he also is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. So once I read this this morning, Sunday, I knew I had to talk about it in this week's video because there's just so much here that I really, really want to talk about. So starting from the beginning, Zacchaeus, chief collector, rich, also another way to put it is a tax collector. So he collects money from the people. And so that's the reason why the crowd calls him a sinner. They see someone who collects money from anyone, regardless of their means or anything, to be a sinner, to be someone not of the people. Furthermore, he's rich. He has much more than a lot of people who do not have means, essentially. A lot of people, the more disenfranchised in society, he is identified as being different from them. And so when he's decided to go see who Jesus was, not necessarily he didn't know who he was like the crowd did. The crowd that was already around Jesus. And so when he came to figure out who he was, since he did not come and he was not prepared and he was not able to see him, and in the passage it says on account of his small of stature. So despite his wealth, despite all the power and influence he's amassed amongst his people, not even he on his own could see God, Christ. So what does he do? He runs ahead and uses the sycamore tree, a growth from the earth, to gain leverage to see someone who, by any other means, even his own means, he wasn't able to see. He had to elucidate this fervor. And so when Christ saw this and he saw Zacchaeus on the tree, he was like, come down, for I will be in your house today. So what happens now? Jesus is at Zacchaeus' house, and so Zacchaeus is aware of how people see him. He's aware that people see him as a sinner for taking people's money. And so what does he tell Christ? He says how he gives half his goods to the poor, and that if he does wrong someone through which he says defraud, he restores it fourfold. So he's trying to convince Christ, who knows him already. Christ knows all of us. God knows all of us. He's trying to convince God, hey God, look at all I'm doing. Despite my position and despite what I do to these people, look at all the charity I do. Isn't that good, right? He's trying to seek that validation. He's insecure with himself despite being a rich person. And so how does Christ respond to him? Today salvation has come to this house, since he is also a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. So what is Christ saying here? He's saying Zacchaeus is someone who was lost. We see this across many passages in the Bible, but Jesus goes to the sinners, to those who are lost, to those who are in need of his help, who are in need of God. Because up until this point, Zacchaeus has not been living in a godly way. Despite what he says that he's doing with his money, with his possessions, that's not enough. Christ is not recognizing this effort that he's using to make up for the sin of taking from people and becoming rich, taking from people in a selfish way, and then making up for that selfishness by at least presenting yourself as selfless through charity. It's insufficient. The way of God is not just make mistakes and make up for it and use those making up for it as an excuse for the mistakes. No, God is the only one who forgives us, right? We have to make amends with God. We should also make amends with each other, but when it comes to like morality and stuff like that, and then our eternal soul, God is the one who determines if we did right. So if Christ recognized this as being a sufficient making up for the sin of collecting money from people and becoming rich off of other people's suffering. I know I'm putting a lot of my own words in here, but it's something that I feel like I need to, just because of how I see the collection of money from people. And he doesn't, despite these deeds, he doesn't abandon Zacchaeus either. That's the other part of the story that I also want to be explicitly clear. Just because Zacchaeus was seen as a sinner by the crowd, and just because Christ doesn't recognize the efforts he's made to redeem himself in the eyes of the people, that doesn't mean that God has abandoned Zacchaeus. He's actually putting in that effort. He knows himself to be the one who has to enlighten the people who are lost. Zacchaeus is lost, and he won't abandon him because he's lost. He won't abandon him because he's rich. All rich people, all people who wrong others, will not be abandoned. They will not stop receiving the love of God. We all as people will receive God's love. That isn't what's up for debate. It's a matter of how we share that love with one another. It's how we understand our place and our relationship with God and with one another. That's the thing that we need to work on. That's the thing that Christ is teaching us. He's not teaching us how to receive his love. He's not teaching us the fact that we need to do a specific thing to receive God's love. God's love is always. But if we want to learn how to spread that love with one another so we may live a more peaceful and fulfilling and happy life, and a life that would be pleasing to God, because God will love us regardless of if we please him. That is the kind of love God has for us. But if we are to be seen as pleasing God, as serving God, and I would argue by serving God, we are serving one another. If we are to do that, we have to look beyond ourselves, beyond our selfish greeds, beyond making up for that selfishness and that greediness through acts of charity, public acts of charity, and claiming that those acts of charity redeem us. We have to look past all that. Christ doesn't even entertain that. He's like, no, you are lost. You are a son of Abraham, and I love you. You are one of God's many children. And I'm not thinking that Jesus is exclusively saying that, oh, only the sons of Abraham get to receive God's love. That's not what I'm getting at here. But more so, people who have understood themselves to be chosen by God, they themselves are susceptible to these sins, just like we all are. No one is safe from the temptation of sin. No one is safe. And when I say sin, I mean acting against God and acting against God's people. And when I say God's people, I mean all of us, all of humanity. So despite Zacchaeus finding himself both redeemed by being a son of Abraham and also being redeemed by doing charitable works, that's not enough. Christ explicitly states how he came to seek and save the lost, which he's recognized Zacchaeus as one of. Zacchaeus is willing to receive God, and he literally does in his home, which you can say as metaphorically as in his soul as well. And so even though God is within his soul, he's still struggling, but God makes it clear what he came to do. He's not here to say that Zacchaeus has been doing good. He's not here to tell him, okay, all you have to do is be charitable and your wrongs are forgiven. No, that's not enough. So that's essentially the main message that I wanted to talk about. Here we have the image of Zacchaeus on the tree looking at Christ, trying to see him, and Christ is saying, come down. Why are you going out of your way trying to be above others so you can receive me? Come down, come to my level, come so we can talk one-on-one, come so we can have a civil discussion, something that Zacchaeus is potentially not even like used to, especially someone who's so important and he sees himself as important. Like the dichotomy between the two, he might not fully be respecting by trying to be above Christ and trying to look down to see him. Christ says, no, get on my level. We're going to have a talk. We're going to be respectful of each other. And we're going to figure out what we can do so we can spread God's love in the way that is most pleasing to him. So yeah, that is, those are my thoughts on this passage. It definitely can come across as a little bit more dogmatic, I suppose. If there's anything that I talked about that you felt like I wasn't explaining well, or there might be some doublespeak going on in terms of words that I was using, I'd like to explain further what could use more clarification. But to summarize, Zacchaeus, despite being seen as a sinner and despite not really being able to correct the wrongs that he's done as a rich chief collector, Christ, and by proxy God, still comes to him and still talks with him, doesn't recognize the ways in which he's trying to deal with his own insecurity and the way in which he's trying to find redemption for himself, but rather tells him what is necessary. Unfortunately, we don't get that teaching here, but I think that's part of the point of the Bible is as you read the Bible, as you get snippets of the teaching, Christ teaches us what we're expected to do. Zacchaeus doesn't express the fact that he loves all these people. He says he gives to the poor. He doesn't say that he loves the poor. He doesn't say that he loves the ones he defrauds. He says that he restores fourfold whatever ways that he defrauds them. Love is missing in his message. And Christ is here to show us that love is what we need to continue to share with one another. It is the way in which we can find communion with one another, to be a community which is full of love, full of respect, full of just greatness. And that is what Christ came to teach us. So yeah, thank you so much for making it to the end. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comments, and I'd be more than happy to have those discussions with you. I hope you have a happy and blessed day. And again, thank you for your time.